Verticality has probably been the biggest reason why Barcelona have been so successful under Mr. Hansi Flick, where the directness has really been just too much to handle for the opposition. With Barcelona creating high quality chances, often cutting straight through the middle, where the likes of Robert Lewandowski, Rafinha, also Lamine Yamal, Pedri, and even Dani Olmo, often in one-on-one situations with the goalkeeper. As always, please do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot to get this family to grow. We upload weekly Barcelona tactical content only. I feel that the importance of the centre backs has really been overlooked, with Barcelona often in the build-up phase extremely wide, opening up the opposition where they have a chance to follow Barcelona, or if they would decide to stay perfect, then the centre backs have all the space in the world to progress the ball through. Even with a high press, it's also risky for the opposition because then they leave all the zones open, and between the lines, these centre backs are often capable of finding these players right in those lines, and also with the pressure, especially the likes of Kubarsi, finding the likes of Robert Lewandowski, Rafinha, and the movement in behind can sometimes be too much for the opposition. Rafinha's goal against Valladolid is a perfect example of this, where the opposition decided to stay compact and narrow, leaving Kubarsi, the fullbacks, and Inigo open, where the front two is not even pressing onto the centre backs, applying no pressure, with Rafinha running in behind. Kubarsi therefore then finds Rafinha with a vertical movement, and I honestly believe that in the Xavi era we would have circulated the ball, but the directness here was just too much with the runs in behind. Even in the situation where the centre backs do get pressed, we saw against Girona, that does not change the fact that Barcelona wants to be vertical, as Girona did decide to press the centre back, but look how much channels they opened up, and you can see that Robert Lewandowski is moving into that channel to be an option. But meanwhile at the back you saw that Koundé was running in behind, and therefore Barcelona now was gone, and Koundé was actually capable of finding Dani Olmo, who was actually finishing it. So we're going to look at the movement also in particular now to see how it goes. Xavi's system is nowhere near as fluid as Flick's system, as we saw a 3-2-5 try to cover the half spaces while also having width at the same time, overloading the midfield. These positions were at all times were covered, as Xavi wanted players in these positions, but the opposition could predict where the ball was going very easily, and vital movements and chances were often stopped by the opposition. There was no movement, it was a rigid system, and it wasn't really good. So Barcelona relied on individual brilliance most of the time as well. But let's take a look at the Flick system. In the days of Xavi, we saw that the centre-backs had the ball the most. Now this is also the case of Mr. Hansi Flick, but I feel like the double pivot was kind of blocking the verticality that we could have seen from the system. That's why with Mr. Hansi Flick, you see the likes of Pedri and Casado dropping into these wider spaces where you see how they open up the opposition. If Pedri should be pressed, they'd leave gaping holes for the opposition. So the movement from Pedri here is absolutely sensational, and also the wingers coming in, cutting inside. So these deeper rolls that you see from the likes of Pedri is great for this verticality from Mr. Hansi Flick. This tactic was already paying dividends in the first game against Valencia. We saw the deep lying playmaker with somebody running in behind the verticality and the space that was left, and that resulted in a penalty for Barcelona. So the movement here was just incredible, and Barcelona would have circulated that ball under Xavi, but no, with Flick it goes to the box. Now interestingly enough, it's not only Pedri or Casado who's dropping. We've seen in the last few games, you now see the likes of Lamine Yamal also dropping into these deeper areas, trying to create from there. We've already seen Rafinha doing the same thing. So there's just so much movement. If you block Pedri, then Rafinha can drop. If you block Rafinha, then Lamine can drop into these areas. So the creation and the verticality can never be stopped. There's just too much movement for the opposition to cover. One of the most productive times when Lamine Yamal was actually dropping deep was that goal against Valladolid for Robert Lewandowski, where he was coming in deep. And what's good about this tactic is that all the players Flick has dropping is all press resistant. And one thing I've also noticed is that these players all have the ability to find these players. You always have a player that's quality on the ball, who's dropping deep, and you have a player who's quality, who's running in behind. So this is absolutely great verticality. The movement is definitely the most important part of this verticality. And one player in particular that the movement has benefited the most is Rafinha. Rafinha is also dropping into these half space all over the midfield. He's dropping into these areas. And I actually think that he is the real number 10 of Barcelona. But not only the dropping movements and the movements he's doing in between the lines to be able to receive the ball, but also the fact that he's covering for the runs in behind that Robert Lewandowski is supposed to make. So Rafinha has really been benefiting the most from the movement and from the verticality. No wonder he's been so sensational. And also the fact that if Lamine drops deep, Koundé can invert, and then he can also take the positions of Lamine Yamal and these underlapping runs that you later on see from Koundé. So the movement, I think, has really benefited Rafinha the most. However, I want you guys to tell me, who do you think benefited the most from the verticality and the movement? Because my pick here is definitely Rafinha, who we've seen at a level never before. But I feel like Robert Lewandowski is another player who of many of you might feel like has benefited the most from the system, in particular the verticality that we're talking about. And also I want you guys to let me know, who do you think was the best player? Because I think Pedri has been the best player. We look like a very different side without Pedri. As always, do subscribe to the channel, guys. It's going to help us a lot to get this family to grow bigger. We upload weekly Barcelona content.